Welcome to the Screen Podcast. Thank you for joining us for insight and analysis of the global film industry, brought to you by the teams from Screen International and ScreenDaily.com. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm a contributing editor at Screen and thrilled to be your host here. We've just had the Baftas weekend, so I am joined by Screen Editor-in-Chief Matt Mueller. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Wendy.
And Screen's tireless awards and box office editor, Charles Gant. Hello,
Hey, Wendy.
Charles. Hello. So we're going to talk about this Baftas weekend, the controversies in the room, also about the BBC edit of the award show. We'll talk about a few surprise winners. We'll talk about what this could mean for the Oscars. And then we will try to lighten the mood a little bit with a recap of the party circuit, which we traversed late into the night on Sunday. Okay, so as we record, there is still fallout happening from the controversy, which I will sum up. We will keep covering every development in that over at ScreenDaily.com, because I don't expect this story to be done and dusted in one day or indeed in 1 week. So just a very short recap. So John Davidson, MBE, is one of the most famous people in the world who has Tourette's. He was obviously going to be at the Bafta ceremony because the film based on his life, I Swear, was multiple nominated and now won multiple Baftas. Bafta had put measures in place to accommodate for his tics and his movements, but unfortunately, John uttered the N-word while two Black presenters were on stage handing out an award, which was unfortunate for all involved, I think we can say. I want to start by saying the three of us, none of us is a person of color. None of us has lived experience of Tourette's. We are film journalists and Bafta members and voters. But I've tried to read about a sort of multitude of perspectives to see how this all exists, that, yes, people understand that this was an involuntary tic. It was not something shouted and meant, but it was still caused harm. And it caused trauma, probably, in that room when people hear this word. So, Matt, any lessons learned on this so far?
Well, it's echoing what you said. I mean, what a terrible outcome for everyone involved. I think it's one of those rock and hard place scenarios where, do you not invite a disability advocate whose life story is told in one of the leading BAFTA contenders that year, or do you invite him and risk some potentially challenging outcomes? I think everyone would have been prepared, knowing what could possibly happen. It probably went far worse than they ever imagined. Of course, it went far worse than they ever imagined. And it ends up then feeling, unfortunately, like one blunder after another about what's happened since. So I think it's obviously very kind of offensive and sad what he said, and it has upset a lot of people, quite rightly. And like you say, we're not in the group that was mentioned in that sort of slur, so we can't sort of know how that feels. But it's it was immensely degrading and offensive to a lot of people. But I think how it's been handled afterwards has been more challenging in some ways, because they've almost made it worse. Really, once that slur was uttered, everything should have been marshaled to make sure that it did not make it to the broadcast. And how it did make it to the broadcast is a question that only BAFTA, the BBC, and Penny Lane, the production company, can answer. There's obviously lots of different scenarios about, people being in trucks editing and therefore not really sort of hearing it. But the fact that it went out, after the delay of editing the show, and then it still went out on BBC primetime is pretty shocking. So I think people do have things to answer for here.
Yeah, I will just recap a little bit of what's happened since Sunday night. Is that for people who don't understand, the BBC broadcast goes out 2 hours delayed from the actual live ceremony, so they do edit it, and we'll talk about some of those other edits later. The BBC on Monday morning by about sort of 11:30 a.m. had apologized and taken down the replay from the iPlayer, which is their catch-up service. Bafta took almost 24 hours to apologize, it seemed to me. So their apology came on Monday night. or Monday late afternoon, early evening. Um, they then on Tuesday late afternoon, they sent a letter to Bafta members saying that they're conducting a comprehensive review. There was an email address you could email if you were wanting to contribute to this, and they said they were talking to the studios involved. So, Charles, any thoughts from you about what can be learned from this?
Well, I mean, just to reiterate what Matt said, I think it's very difficult to balance those two seemingly conflicting situations where you want to give respect to a disability campaigner. I can really only just give you my personal perspective, which
Please.
is that it was very clearly heard where I was sitting. I was sitting actually quite far back. And I was sitting next to a senior executive from IMAX and his wife. And I mean, it was shock and awe on my row. It was absolute horror what had happened. And then, I mean, then eventually Alan Cumming was presumably fed a line to apologize if anyone was offended. And it was so insufficient and so far below what was necessary at that moment. And I had a bathroom break. I couldn't get back in until the next piece of VT, and I met a senior distribution executive who was there with his wife. I mean, they were just like horrified and talking about leaving. I don't know what decision they took. But I don't think BAFTA, look, I love BAFTA. I have many friends at BAFTA. I'm a huge supporter of BAFTA. You know, we work very closely with BAFTA. I am proud to be a member, and I've been involved in many juries and long-listing juries, and I have huge respect and admiration for BAFTA. I do not think they grasped this nettle or grasped this issue, quickly enough and strongly enough. So that's my big feeling at the moment.
Yeah. I would agree with all of what you said. I think one thing that sort of shocked me on the Monday was reading that Delroy Lindo, who was one of those presenters alongside Michael B. Jordan, he told Vanity Fair that nobody from BAFTA said a thing to him.
Wow.
And I do think they had maybe prepped presenters that something might happen in advance, but after this incident, nobody from BAFTA went up to him and said, "Are you okay? What can we do?" Or just a very simple, "We're so sorry this has happened," is sort of while you were on stage. And that, to me, is where BAFTA really let the side down. And they have since made a public apology to Delroy and Michael and, everybody else in the room. But I think not to offer an apology on the night, or not to realize, and also maybe not to work with the BBC editors to make sure that, like you said, Charles, it was sort of shock and awe on your row. Why was there no shock and awe when it was being edited?
There's such a big disconnect in the whole chain of command here. I mean, what exactly? I mean, there was a sharp intake of breath in the entire auditorium when that came out. I personally didn't hear it, but I mean, obviously everyone around us did. And, I was told what was happening. So, but once that did happen, it's like, yeah, where was BAFTA not rushing out to that truck and say, "Do you know that thing that just happened? Make sure you edit that out of the broadcast tonight, if nothing else." And then, of course, the apologies to Delroy and Michael B. Jordan. And, I mean, look, there's obviously been a lot of reporting since then. And, one of the reports is that basically Warner Brothers got on the case straight away and said, "Please take this out of the broadcast." So how this kind of like slipped through despite the entire audience and a studio being on the case with it is pretty shocking. So I think there's and as Charles says, look, I mean, we love BAFTA. We are hugely respectful. We are very honored to be part of the Academy, but yeah, it's a bit of an own goal here in terms of what's kind of happened since then. And it's a shame for Robert as well, the best actor winner, Robert Aramayo, because it was such a feel good win. You could feel just the kind of the happiness in the room that he had won, and obviously his delight in being on stage and giving that sort of really sort of lovely speech, and just the film itself for raising awareness in the first place of what it's like to have Tourette's, and how everything is not kind of like deliberate or malicious, or it's an affliction that you deal with in your entire life, and you can't ever really get over it. So I mean, it's there's a moment in the film that kind of shows exactly what it's like, which is towards the end when he's getting his MBE and he shouts "fuck the Queen" as he's about to get his medal from the Queen. So that's exactly
Actually, I went and watched some educational videos of Black people who have Tourette's.
Yeah.
who have used this word as a tick, and they were explaining their perspective. So yes, I did learn a little something more, I guess, about Tourette's. But yeah, I think all of us want to just be able to celebrate these films, but this has happened. And yeah, as we've said, Bafta is now doing a review with those studios involved, I think, of both films, and an internal review, and have encouraged members to contact them. Charles, I've got a different question, which is I was not sat in the hall for the award ceremony. I was I have to watch the 2-hour delay, and it feels so old-fashioned. BBC can show live sports. Why don't they just run it with a 10-second delay in case something like this happens? Or a 10-minute delay if they really need some time? Because what everybody ends up doing is reading the news reports and the social media coming out of the live show. So I'm watching that to see who's won. And then 2 hours later, I get this edited highlights or lowlights in some cases, which I'm going to bring up in a second. Why does BBC have to do this? Do we know? Why can't they have a more modern system and why can't they show all 3 hours?
Well, your final question gets to the heart of the matter. They do not want to show 3 hours. They want it to be on, excuse me, they want it to be on BBC One on their main channel, and they want it to be a mainstream show for a wide audience. And I think what BBC would say is that if we show the whole show, that is a minority channel awards show, and therefore it'd be on BBC.
Put it on BBC Four or something.
Something else, and then the revenue rights to BAFTA would be much lower. There'd be much less incentive for EE to be the title sponsor. So that goes to the heart of the matter of it, and they've tried different ways of doing some of it live. Do you remember a few years ago? I had some of it pre-record, then they had this kind of weird filler content in the middle, and then we kind of joined up with some of it going out live. Did not work. So we are where we are. And of course the Oscars is live, and they show every category at the Oscars. They've experimented with not showing every category, and PAS always pushes back firmly against that. BAFTA have decided that they're going to go along with this. A number of categories are just in that little montage at the end. And I honestly, Wendy, I cannot see a way around it, because unless BBC caves and says, you know what, the upside of having this be live, be simultaneous with social media is a big enough win for us to accept the fact that we're going to have 2 shorts categories, and we're going to have all of the craft categories, then it's not going to change.
Okay. Thank you for explaining, because it makes me scratch my head every year.
And also, it would just take the control even further out of their hands. I mean, if they can't sort of, fix something in like sort of several hours, then sort of trying to do something in, a few seconds delay or a few minutes delay doesn't fill you with a lot of confidence, does it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what else I just think, if you can't take out the world's worst racial slur given a 2-hour editing window, then yeah, I also have some issues of what else they edited, but Matt, maybe you want to come
Well,
back
I
in.
mean, I know one you're going to mention, which is, of course, the My Father's Shadow win, and Akinole Davies Jr., winning the outstanding British debut for that, as with his brother and the producers of the film, and giving a lovely speech, but at the end sort of saying "Free Palestine." Well, I mean, I don't think any of us are surprised that didn't make the final cut, because obviously I think the BBC would have been on high alert for any mention of Palestine following last summer's Glastonbury debacle with Bob Vylan.
I forgot about Bob Vylan.
Yeah,
Yes.
where they were broadcasting things like "Death to the IDF" and all that kind of stuff that were taking place at his concert. So I think they were. That didn't make the cut, but that's very sad, obviously, because that got a huge cheer in the room, and that left a very weird thing in the edit where you're kind of watching Akinole's speech, and then he kind of finishes in a slightly sort of flat bit, but then there's a massive eruption of applause, and that massive eruption of applause was definitely to his comment about Free Palestine. There was also a strange bit where Paul Thomas Anderson said anyone who thinks this wasn't a good year for movies can piss off, and they cut piss out, but they changed it to something like pick off or something. It was just, you can't really make it out, but it's another very strange edit. So they kind of they just seem to mess up quite a few things on the night.
Yeah. I've got a big one. As your resident good feminist, gentlemen, I have to point out, when I was watching Hamnet, won for Best British Film, great celebration. You've got all these amazing people on stage. Sam Mendes takes the mic, and he is one of the producers of that film. He is not the lead producer of that film. I think the originator of that film was Liza Marshall. She got Pippa Harris, who is Sam's producing partner, as the other, I think, joint lead producer. Screen has interviewed Liza and Pippa together, championing them as the great British powerhouses behind this film. And then on the BBC broadcast only, we only see Sam Mendes get on stage, which first of all got my sort of hackles up a bit because, yeah, he's the man. Is he taking credit? The optics weren't great. But then Liza Marshall took the stage, had a nice balance to Sam. I still would have loved to hear Pippa say a few words, maybe Chloe Zhao. I know not everybody can speak, but it just, on the BBC, they cut out Liza Marshall entirely. This film is her baby. She read the book by Maggie O'Farrell before it was out. I mean, I was just so disappointed for that team not to see Liza's voice, not to see this strong, amazing powerhouse of a woman in the UK industry, and she gets edited out. I don't know the decision why Sam spoke first. And this is not an attack on him. I mean, he spoke, fine. He thanked Spielberg. We've asked Universal if they had any sort of clarity of why Sam would be the one speaking first. Was that a team decision or a studio decision? And we didn't hear a response back to that query. But yeah, what did... Clearly, it bothered me, but I have gone and watched Liza's speech on YouTube. I encourage anybody to do that.
Yeah, we embedded it in Screen Daily, didn't we? If anyone hasn't seen it and wants to go see what Liza had to say. I mean, I would... like you said, we did reach out to Universal. We didn't get a response. I would say that to me seems to be a studio decision that Sam Mendes would lead and be the first to speak, for whatever reason, pitting him as the leader of the group of people who were accepting the award. I think knowing the Oscars are still to come, the Oscar voting window is still to come. Sam Mendes is a very high profile person. People watching the show on the BBC are likely to know who Sam Mendes is, but will not likely know who Liza Marshall is. So I think that's unfortunately why, and they were the only two people to speak. So I think that's why, unfortunately, Liza did get cut off once Sam had spoken. Charles, what did you think?
Well, just on the optics of it, the book is written by a woman. The screenplay is adapted by the author of the book, who is a woman, and Chloe Zhao, who is a woman. It's directed by a woman, and it's lead produced by two, and it wins Outstanding British Film. I'm sorry. I mean, I think that perhaps Pippa didn't speak because her producing partner, Sam Mendes, had spoken, and perhaps they made the decision that he would speak instead of her. But I think it would have been much, much better if Pippa and Liza had been the two people who had spoken.
Yeah, I think one thing to say, though, is I think when you can see in the broadcast when they're getting up to go on stage, you can see Chloe even hesitating about whether she should go up. So I think there was probably even a little bit of so I'm not surprised she didn't speak, but for sure, Liza should have had her moment.
Yeah. And just to say, Chloe Zhao is very, very openly talks about being neurodivergent herself. She might not want to have spoken. I don't want to say she should have done it's their decision, but it's for such a female-led story, and the whole production is female-led. I wanted to see the woman, maybe the woman first, at least.
The named nominees are, by the way, this is not like the Oscars with Best Picture. The named nominees are the director, screenwriters, and producers. And Chloe is a director and screenwriter of that film. And is she a producer as well? I mean, there's Maggie O'Farrell was a named nominee. So there were a lot of named nominees that they could have picked, to speak.
I was happy to see Maggie up there on stage, and Chloe and everybody, and the kids from the cast. And yes, so I don't want to take any shine off the BAFTA win for that team. It wasn't a great look. And again, I'm blaming the BBC editor of that show at some point.
BBC editor's fault.
Yeah. Charles, I also was, this is just, let me be cranky about the BAFTAs week. I was also a bit annoyed to see, if we are on BBC One, and we want to show maybe the more popular films and talent. I was really surprised that this new family and children's category was broadcast. The winner of that was a small film called Boong, which I've never heard of. And yet the big animation winner, animated film winner, Zootropolis 2, which, has made over $1 billion at the global box office, that was cut out. So, like, do we know who's making decision on what to show and which crafts get in also?
Well, my understanding on the crafts is that they rotate the crafts year by year.
Okay, that's classy. I'll accept that, even with my crankiness.
So that it's not always, cinematography that gets in. I'm not quite sure what the kind of formula is for that, whether all crafts are considered equal or whether certain crafts have more of a chance of being included. I was not aware that animated feature was a category that was not automatically aired. I have missed that memo, and I was very surprised when you told me that it hadn't been included. And it does seem to be an extraordinary choice when award shows are always reaching for relevance to audiences, and they're normally, because we voters are going to vote for art house films often, and very irritatingly to the broadcasters, give best, we're going to give best picture to Anora or, equivalent titles, and we shun blockbusters. So when you have a category where not just $1.85 billion, by the way, worldwide, it is it's the highest grossing animated film of all time from a Hollywood studio. So not counting a Chinese film
Chinese blockbuster
that did better, but it's the biggest Hollywood studio animation of all time. So it's just bonkers that they made that choice. And
you know what I'm remembering as we speak? I think the Boong category was presented by Paddington the Bear.
It was. You're right.
And I have to say, even Paddington fell a bit flat. Some of those jokes, the marmalade, it just didn't land.
A bit.
But people love Paddington.
He was one of the worst bits of the evening. I'm sorry.
People love Paddington, and I love the fact that Studio Canal does not hold a grudge that Paddington in Peru was shunned in that very same category last year. Absolutely should have been nominated. So, if I'd been running a company, I'd be like, what? You didn't nominate my film, and now you want Paddington to be on the stage? And oh yeah, actually, we don't need to sell more tickets for our stage show. So Paddington, get your costume on and get down onto that red carpet. Yeah. Now, look, I'm not saying they shouldn't have included children's and family film, although I do not think that category is flourishing. They're not getting enough films submitted. I have seen Boong, and it's a very, very sweet film. It's a lovely film. But do I think it is as good as the film that India submitted to the Oscars, for example, which is Homebound?
Homebound, yeah.
No, it's not. It's not as good as that. Which, by the way, didn't get nominated. Is it as good as the exceptional film from last year, which was All We Imagine Is Light, that came from India, that was nominated for Bafta but didn't win, lost to Amelia Perez? No, it's not in that category. So for me, it is a nice, sweet film. But does it deserve to be put on a kind of a platform equivalent to all those other films that won Baftas this year? I would struggle to say that it did. So for me, this category still has a way to go. Distributors need to engage in it much more meaningfully. Bafta, if they're going to keep it, need to really kind of put their thinking caps on and think of ways to encourage more people to participate, because I don't think they've quite landed it yet.
Oh, we should be happy for the team, though. What an amazing
win. Oh, they gave a beautiful speech.
A beautiful speech. And the international profile, I was reading in an Indian outlet that they've got an Indian release off the back of this win, because it hasn't even been released in India. So they're getting a cinema release in India because they won this award. So, good for them. Good for them.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's be less cranky.
And it also illuminates an important topic about border dispute in the area where it is set. It does dig into some very interesting themes. So I'm really not dissing the film at all. And I'm not saying it didn't deserve to win, because that is a jury decision, and that jury decided that it was, more worthy of winning than the other nominees, which included the brilliant animation Arco, for example. but yeah, I feel that awards used to exist at the children's and awards, and I think it's sat there more comfortably than it has so far at the BAFTA Film Awards.
Yeah, fair enough. I think by the time this podcast is coming out on Thursday, these awards are on Sunday. I think most people listening will have known and clocked their own idea of what was a surprise. I'm just going to run through a few. Sean Penn winning instead of Stellan Skarsgård. Mr. Nobody against Putin winning. I think that was a real surprise. I thought that's the smallest of the films. It didn't have theatrical, I don't believe, or not much theatrical in the UK. It's a BBC
Storyville.
pickup. Storyville, yeah.
Yeah.
Robert Aramayo, I think that sort of, we're not supposed to say who we voted for. I had not voted for him, but I love that performance so much. And I love it when BAFTA goes different to the Oscars, because if they're just the same, there's no reason to have both. To see Robert Aramayo, when the Rising Star Award and then turn around, beat Leo and Timmy, just the look on his face, the way he got up and hugged his parent. I mean, it gives me goosebumps still talking about it now. So those were some of the surprises. Charles, did you have any other unexpected winners to mention?
I don't know about unexpected. I think that we thought One Battle After Another would do well, and Sinners would do quite well, and that Hamnet would win Best Actress, and it might, and it would probably perhaps certainly seem the favourite to win Outstanding British Film. But I would just echo what you have just said. I mean, look, full disclosure, I am a big fan of The Perfect Neighbour, but
Me too.
I did think that it was going to. I did think it was going to win, and if it didn't win, I wouldn't necessarily have sort of pointed to Mr. Nobody Against Putin as the film that was going to take it down. I think that was for me a surprise. I thought that. I mean, look, I love I Swear. And I'm thrilled the casting director won, but I do think the casting of Marty Supreme was just incredible. And I still would have thought Jennifer Venditti is his favourite at the Oscar. But I mean, she faces some formidable competition from some other films. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting about Robert Aramayo because I ran into the director Kurt Jones later on in the night, and he reminded me that we'd had a conversation, the Critics Circle Film Awards, and I'd been saying to him, don't think Robert has no chance in this category. Don't think for 1 minute, because I'm talking to the other teams, and he is a threat that they are very aware of. And I'd actually forgotten we'd had that conversation, but he said, he reminded me of that. And it's true, people were
He really
aware.
picked up steam, I think.
It did, and they they're all plugged in to like what voters are thinking, and they knew that this was a very real possibility.
Yeah, I always felt he had a strong chance, and I'm just going to say I did vote for him. And I know a number of people who did vote for him as well. I think the more people I spoke to were like, "Who did you vote for? Who did you vote for?" And I heard so many people say Robert, and I just felt, it just had that feeling, didn't it, that he was going to, I personally felt going into the awards that he was going to win. I also felt Kate Hudson might pull off the upset in Best Actress, and obviously got that badly wrong, but, nothing was going to deny Jessie Buckley her Best Actress win. But I do think, I think it is going to be Jessie at the Oscars. Maybe Kate has a sort of, has a remote outside chance, but yeah, apart from the surprises you both mentioned, nothing big, no big surprises for me.
Charles, does any of this surprise, do you think, you kind of mentioned, but, do we think any of these surprises will repeat at the Oscar or have Oscar voters thinking a bit differently? To me personally, obviously with I Swear and Robert Aramayo, that's not eligible for the Oscars this year. It would be next year with Sony Classics, as we mentioned. Do you see these BAFTA results having an impact with Oscar voters?
I mean, what I think is that the supporting actor and actress categories are extremely open and extremely competitive. And these results at the BAFTAs only confirm that. So in terms of which is great news for the Oscars, because the problem with the Oscars is that we've had by the time we get there, we've had so many award shows that, and we'll have had SAG AFTRA awards, and everything just begins to look like a foregone conclusion. I think this, at least in these two categories, I think genuinely we don't know what's going to happen at the Oscars, and really, I think all the nominees are in the mix, and then of course in actor, we also don't know what's going to happen, because Robert winning does not clarify anything for the impasse voters. Um, uh, Marty Supreme won 0 at the Baftas. Disappointing outcome for that film. And they will be hopeful, I think, that they're going to do, prevail in a category or two.
Yeah, I think I mean you got to figure Timothée Chalamet is their best hope in that sort of at the Oscars. I think he was the front runner probably for the Baftas as well, and then Robert pulled off the upset. But I think it's the Actors Awards this weekend, I think, and that I think if Timothy wins there, I think that puts him back in front runner status.
Yeah. And I've been hearing from some people, especially in LA, who have said, I guess there's been some sort of retrospective of Chalamet going on somewhere in LA, or just he's been really doing really smart appearances that remind people he's not just this punk that wears funny bright colors occasionally, that he's a serious actor, that he's an adult, that all those things. So yeah, well, it'll make the Oscars even more interesting to see.
I mean, I love how open the acting categories are, because like Charles was saying, sometimes it can feel like a foregone conclusion by the time we get to this stage. And I genuinely think in both supporting categories, there is almost everybody has a chance in those. I mean, I would have put Sean Penn like 5th out of 6 of those contenders. I can't believe he won. I thought if anyone was going to win from that film, it would be Benicio. And I thought that's why he stayed away, because he probably thought Benicio was going to win as well. So that was a surprise. But I think in Best Supporting Actress, I would love to see Amy Madigan win. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the chance for voters to kind of reward that film and, for creating one of the most memorable characters of the year in Aunt Gladys. So come on. And come on.
Any moments from, you guys were in the ceremony, I was watching some of it on television, as I've mentioned, but one of my favorite moments was Ryan Coogler. I don't think he was expecting to win, and that was just sort of a joyous moment of him running for screenplay. But also, I love that he mentioned that Joachim Trier, who was obviously up in the same category with Eskil Vogt, that Joachim had been a mentor to him. And I've interviewed Joachim, as you well know, for many years, and I never knew that. And I was able to see Joachim later, and I said, I didn't know this about Ryan. And he's like, he's such a wonderful person. And I think they might have met at the Sundance Labs one year or somewhere like that. But I love it when we sort of, especially us, we're watching all these races, we've heard all the interviews, and I had never heard that, and I loved it. And I thought that was such a nice moment in the actual awards. Did you feel any other buzz from anything like that?
Well, similarly, I was going to mention Robert Aramayo giving that tribute to Ethan Hawke, who was, sitting there and able to thank him from coming to talk to him at Juilliard. And I'm sure Ethan had no idea that his fellow nominee was one of the people that he came and spoke to. So I'm sure that was a lovely moment for Ethan Hawke, and it was certainly, a great moment for the audience.
Yeah. I hope they had some champagne together afterwards. Matt, did you love any speech or any moment like that?
I loved both of those moments. I particularly thought Ethan Hawke was actually going to cry when he got singled out. So that was really lovely. But I mean, I loved kind of 2 speeches from 2 first-time nominees who became winners, which was the I Swear casting director Lauren Evans and also the Frankenstein costume designer Kay Hawley. They neither had been nominated before. They win for their first nominations, and they both gave really lovely and moving and emotional speeches. So I love kind of like that Crafts gets obviously recognized, and we talked about how they kind of shunt it to like a very quick clip reel at the end now, and it's a shame because it's obviously one of the very few times that people that on that side of the industry get recognized. So I did like both of those moments from the show.
I'm gonna have to give one more quick to Wunmi, who just gave the night such a great British flair from the start. And I met her, and I'm saying this in a self-serving way, when she was a Screen International Star of Tomorrow in 2009. And I mean, just a magnificent performance. And I do hope maybe that could impact some of the Oscar voters and how they were thinking about that one.
I loved her speech. And I loved the fact that presumably she could see a clock counting down to 0. She was paying no regard to that clock. She was like, this is my moment. I'm on the stage. I may or may not win, other awards, but I'm going for it. And it was, she said everything that she wanted to say, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. And it was a full speech that she had written out. Unlike Jessie, who forgot her speech and then sort of slightly fumbled through. A little bit kind of unfortunate, but
kind of endearing, I'll say, that it's not so rehearsed.
Yeah.
It was endearing, but it's like, if you're not going to bring a piece of paper and you're going to start mentioning your fellow nominees, and, bear in mind how stressful it is to be on that stage and your head has just exploded and words are coming out of your mouth and they're booming around the room, and you can see Leonardo DiCaprio sitting in front of you. I mean, it is an insane position to be in, to be trying to remember the names of your fellow nominees. So
skip ahead past the ceremony and the broadcast for me 2 hours later, and go straight into some of the parties, because Bafta week is a very social week here in London. I'm not even going to start on Bafta night. Let's start the night before. I'm just going to mention I went to a really kind of a scruffy, some sort of awards campaigners got together, a bunch of friends, to do some karaoke at the Soho Hotel. And anybody listening to the sound of my voice here can just imagine what I sound like when I'm singing. But Ben Roberts from the BFI and I got that party started with Islands in the Stream, as we are wont to do. And that was just sort of like a hair down, no pressure, no paparazzi there, and that was kind of a really nice thing. And I hope that might continue for future years. But Charles, you were at the nominees party on the Saturday. How was that?
Well, I was there with my esteemed colleague from Screen International, Ben Dalton. We had a great time. The nominees party is it's a fun one. It's Saturday night. It's at the National Portrait Gallery currently and in recent years, and it does compete with the Charles Finch dinner, which is done with Chanel. And the big stars do show their faces at the nominees and then they get whisked off to the dinner. So it's not like the place to go and meet Leonardo DiCaprio. However, who you do meet are just lovely people who are really thrilled to be there. And, I ran into Archie Madekwe, who was nominated for Rising Star. I had a lovely conversation with him. He's in Lurker, which is a movie I happen to love. He's the producer of Lurker as well. And then I was chatting with the Netflix awards team, and they said, Charles, who do you want to meet? And I said, who I want to meet? I really want to meet Geeta Gandbir from The Perfect Neighbor. And they just took me over and I met her and she was lovely. And I met her husband, and then I met the whole team from The Perfect Neighbor, and then Mstislav Chernov from 2,000 Meters to Andrivka came up, who I had met before, and then his whole team came over, and then, Jim Wilson, the producer of The Voice of Hindu came over, and, that is the vibe. It is not the A-list megastars. It is really nice people, talented people, passionate about their film, having lovely conversations. So I have only great things to say about the nominees party. I just feel incredibly lucky that I've on many occasions have had the chance to go.
Okay. My invite to that and the Finch dinner seem to have been lost in the post. I shall be fixing that for next year. But then on the actual BAFTA night, I was lucky we got to sort of hop around a bit together.
Mm-hmm.
So we started out at Warner Brothers at Kettner's, which is the famous champagne bar. And that was quite swank, I thought. Matt, any notes from Kettner's?
Well, very swank. That was our first stop of the night, wasn't it? And it was great to see a lot of two successful filmmaking teams, the one battle after another team, and Leo in one corner and, Benicio in the other. And then there was Tayana, and there was Chase Infinity, and there was Delroy, Lindo, some of the Sinners team. So it was fantastic to just be in those kind of two rooms right at the start of the evening and see, quite a few people who obviously had a lot to celebrate. So fun and good food. Good food, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
I was going to say the scallops at Kettner's that evening would be my favorite canapé of the whole night.
It
So
was a
maybe this
winner.
will be an official award category in coming years. Charles, anything you wanted to add about Warner Brothers at Kettner's?
No, I mean, just echoing the same. I would say that was definitely our kind of mega A-list moment in terms of being quite a small event, a quite intimate event where there was no danger. I mean, you never get VIP sections at BAFTA parties anyway, but it very much was a kind of incredibly high sort of star count at that event. So a little bit of a thrill to get us going for the evening before heading off to Soho House, which was conveniently around the corner.
Yeah, so Soho House is the location. It's lots of distributors sort of pool their resources. They can invite different members of different teams, and they can invite people like us. But that was, who do we mention? It was Searchlight and Disney. Mubi had some folks there. Picture House had some folks
Media
there.
Canal.
Lionsgate, Studio Canal, of course.
Curzon were there. I don't know if they were part of the official kind of
Okay.
team on it, but there were quite a few Curzon people there.
That to me was where I probably had the most fun conversations because that's where I saw the Sentimental Value team, who I know a bit, and Stellan had a big smile on his face and was just happy for the team's win. But also lots of, I saw the people from Bankside who were, of course, really happy about I Swear. I saw, the folks from Mubi, and Akinola came there, and Wale, his brother, and Eva Yates from BBC Film was in the room, and Matt and I got to hold Claire Benz from
Yes.
Picture House, got one of the big honorary awards, and we got to hold her BAFTA. It's quite heavy.
It was very heavy, wasn't it? Yeah. We got a good picture of you, and I hope you got a good one of me.
Yes, I do. I'll send it right over.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to hear more of Claire Ben's speech in the broadcast as well. It was a shame they cut quite a bit of that out because it was a great speech.
It is a great speech. You can hear it on YouTube. That's going to be my refrain. And then we had to take an Uber or a taxi over to the Netflix party at the 22. Very swank. This was the most partiest of the parties. Yeah, I mean, there was stars in there. Stormzy was like behind me at some point. Somebody pointed out I hadn't even recognized him. It was a bit loud for my old lady taste on a Sunday night, so it was kind of loud. They had a caviar bar. I mean, it is like the party of the parties, I guess.
Yeah, it's become the big BAFTA party, hasn't it? And it's a really good venue. It's lots of rooms and places to go, and I mean, it was so crowded and, like you say, very loud and buzzy, and lots of celebs there. Archie Madekwe, again was there, and various different people. Lots of different dance floors, the caviar bar. It was pretty rocking.
Benedict Wong wearing his bathrobe.
Yes, I saw him. That creeped me out. Why was he wearing is that related to weapons, or am I completely missing something? Or was it in honor of Leo from One Battle?
Yeah, maybe.
I was trying to think what was the bathrobe for, but anyway, it was fun to see him.
Jack O'Connell was there. I spoke to Louis Partridge, former star of Tomorrow. Had a love. Yeah, I mean, these things are. I just like to kind of catch it. I'm not there to like hunt down celebrities. I just want to like catch up with my friends. I had a lovely chat with Claire Binns. Was there. She'd left her own party to go to Netflix. Always lovely to see Cole and Karen Needham from the Internet Movie Database. I had a lovely chat with Gorinda Chadha and her partner, Paul Mayeda Burgess. And yeah, it's just, these are really nice chill events. Unfortunately, I had a screening the next morning, a 10 a.m. screening the next morning of the brilliant Pixar film Hoppers. But I was like a little bit conscious of that fact that I needed to be alert and not hungover. And
I bet you still left after me, Charles. What time did you leave?
I
Tell the viewers, tell the listeners.
I got home I left about 2:40, I think, got home at 3.
Ooh,
See,
okay.
I was in bed by then, so
Oh,
there you
Yeah.
go. I knew you would have stayed out later than me.
But yeah, it is great to see like lots of people in the creative communities here in the UK coming together for those parties to celebrate the films. And yes, we don't want to diminish the controversy that happened, but I do think there's so many great winners. You know, I think there's so many films to celebrate. It felt like once you got to the parties, yes, some people were talking about that, but a lot of people were just so happy to see British filmmaking being celebrated, international guests, you know, Leo in the corner at Kettner's. You know, it's just a nice vibe. I had not been to the Bafta weekend in about 10 years, I think, because I'm always in Berlin.
Yeah. And thank God that was a big change this year, wasn't it? Just meant everyone could be there. Didn't have to leave Berlin early. So I hope that date scheduling happens again next year. Make it happen. Let's kind of
I'm really hoping to, because it was so much fun.
It's
Because I
so much
do
fun.
care.
Let's
I
keep the
do care
BAFTAs
who
the second.
wins.
Keep the BAFTA second weekend of Berlin for sure.
So, Matt, Charles, thanks for party hopping with me on Sunday night. Thanks for being here to tell us some thoughts. Obviously, some serious and some learning, some takeaways, but also, yeah, I'll see you next year at Kettner's for another scallop and glass of champagne. Thank you.
Look forward to it. Look forward to it, Wendy.
Yeah.
Mark in the diary now.
Ditto. Cheers, Wendy.
Thanks for listening to the Screen Podcast. We love that you're joining us here. Please do rate us and subscribe wherever you get your pods. Thanks to the whole Screen team who makes this possible, especially our producer Ellie Kalnan and web editor Orlando Parfit. And special for you, tomorrow on Friday, Ellie is going to be back on the podcast interviewing BAFTA former Rising Star winner David Johnson, as well as his Wasteman co-star Tom Blythe. So do come back and check that episode out. And thanks again for joining us.